fiscal year 2027 budget work session. At this time, the meeting is called to order. Dr. Taylor, I am turning this meeting over to you and your staff to present the budget.
Our budget is an investment in more than 178,000 students and the dedicated employees we serve. Thank you to our board for your careful review and ongoing engagement, and to our families and community. As we begin, it is important to note the changing financial landscape. ESSER funds have ended, mandatory state costs have risen, and economic conditions, along with enrollment trends, require discipline and strategic planning. At the same time, we remain committed to the priorities and what we hear from our staff, students, and our community: competitive compensation, strong safety measures, innovative learning opportunity, and sensitivity to tax impacts. I want to thank our CFO, Ms. Masana Mallard, her team, and our division leaders for their extensive work in preparing this proposed budget. Before Ms. Mallard walks us through the details, and you can go ahead and start making your way up, we will start with a brief enrollment overview update to frame the budget context. I will now call on Mr. Patrick Burke, Interim Chief Operations Officer, to begin tonight's presentation.
Thank you so much. Board members, Dr. Taylor, thank you for this opportunity to present information this evening. Last May, our capital planning update included, I think, our first annual review of enrollment trends and capacity utilization. This year, we're including this as part of our first budget work session, which actually fits well because, as we know, forecasted enrollment drives our allotments, which drives our budget. As we take this opportunity, and we also want to take this opportunity, Okay, Michael, I'm sorry. Can I get help? I'm going to keep talking while Michael's coming up. We're also going to take this opportunity to look at capacity utilization throughout the school district, as well as planned potential redistricting over the next several years. There we go.
Okay.
Okay. I'll do it that way. Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to review quickly some of this information you've seen before, so I'm going to sort of work on some of the muscle memory you have. Big picture, first slide. We're going to begin with a high-level overview of district-wide enrollment. There are two charts on this slide. The middle chart is a familiar one. It shows our enrollment trend from the year 2000 to the year 2025. This is based on our October FTE counts. You'll see the stacked bar chart that represents the ethnic and racial composition of our district over that period of time. And the line chart on the right shows annual change in enrollment year over year. So those essentially show 2 years. That first data point, a little over 6,000, illustrates the change in enrollment between 2000 and 2001. So what's our headline? GCPS, the October FTE count was over 5,000 students less than last year. So we had a significant decline in enrollment. You may remember that forecasting projected decline in enrollment, but not anything to this extent. GCPS is not alone in this. We've included a chart here that shows the 15 largest districts in the United States, as well as the largest districts in the state of Georgia. In addition to enrollment, which we typically show, we've illustrated the estimated annual change in enrollment. That's highlighted for the 15 largest school districts to the far right. And you can see GCPS's decline in enrollment of 1.9% is actually relatively low compared to what other large districts are experiencing. If you look at state districts or large districts in the state of Georgia, we're very similar to other districts in the metro area. Fulton and DeKalb have been declining for years, and we're a little bit more than them, but less than others. So last year we talked about sources of decline, and when we were forecasting enrollment decline, one of the things we focused on was cohort size. This is simply, we're experiencing smaller groups entering the district and relatively larger groups exiting the district as they mature through the grade levels. Last year, we got in a lot of details about this. I'm going to focus on our example here on the far left. This is one of our elementary schools here in GCPS. You'll notice that it includes 2024 enrollment and 2025 enrollment. If you look at that total, that enrollment has declined 34 students. But in the planning department, when we're forecasting enrollments, we're looking at the trends as cohorts move from year to year, much like we do for academics. So if you look at our second grade cohort in 2024, as that cohort matured to third grade, you'll notice they grew 8 students. So grade level changes are in that third column, but cohort growth is in the outside column. So even though we're seeing every grade level, almost every grade level, growing from 24 to 25, the enrollment declined here. Why? It's what we had previously talked about. We had a relatively large cohort in 5th grade in 24 leaving, and then it was replaced by a much smaller cohort in 25 in the kindergarten level. That's a phenomenon we're seeing throughout the district. We talked about it last year that elementary enrollment's been declining since 2016. That's represented at that top chart. We've got enrollments by level represented in that line chart on the top right-hand side. And you can see that we hit a peak of elementary enrollment in 2016, and it's never reached that level again. 3 years later, we hit middle school, a peak into middle school enrollment. 4 years after that, high school enrollment peaked, and we've declined ever since. The phenomena is these smaller cohorts coming up. I love this graphic we talked about last year. You can see it in the grade level trends as well. Kindergarten, first, second, and third, if you map that trend over the same period of time, you see that they're roughly the same until 2013, and then we hit our cap, our high water mark, for lack of a better term, in kindergarten, and it declines after that. The following year, it's a high water mark in first grade, then second grade, and third, and so on and so forth. So that's source number one, and that was some of the prediction that we had made in the current forecast year. You'll see that the source of this obviously is births have been going down. The birth rates among women ages 20 to 29 have declined precipitously since 2006. Birth rates among women 30 to 34 are actually higher than 25 to 29-year-old women. And 35 to 39-year-old birth rates are actually higher than 20 to 24-year-old birth rates. You can see the impact on total births on the right-hand side. We sort of peaked in total number of births in the county and have been declining since that time. We hit a low at COVID. It bounced up a little bit, but we've been relatively stable. And that's despite the fact we have population growth throughout the county and a growing housing market. Source number two of decline, this is different this year. So when we look at what changed from last year to this year compared to prior years, this is a focus. Cohort growth stabilized in many of the middle cohorts. Let me explain what I'm talking about. This middle chart shows percentage cohort growth. Far right is our annual growth in those age cohorts, and the middle column is the average annual growth over the prior 2 years. I'm going to walk through an example to clearly illustrate this. So G2 to G3 is the percent growth from second to third grade in GCPS. In the years 22 to 24, the average for those 2 years was roughly 3% growth. And you can see last year's growth was 0.24. So we've seen a stabilization in growth. Anytime you're looking at county level statistics, we know we're going to have parts of the county that are declining and parts of the county that are growing. In the past, the growth has outpaced the decline to a significant amount, those two prior year growth rates. But last year, it barely outpaced outmigration. You see it in the distribution of grade levels between 24 and 25 as well. These bar charts represent grade levels in those 2 years. We've drawn a line between the second grade 24 cohort to the third grade 25 cohort, and you can see that it's basically stable. Let's talk about the where. So that's that district level perspective. we really have to pull this back and peel it back and look at it geographically. Last year, we showed you a 5-year change in enrollment based upon density of student population. Red areas, you may recall, show growth. If you look really careful in those red areas, you'll see polygons. Those are residential developments that were growing during that time. And blue areas show decline in enrollment. This is a 4-year average or a 4-year change from 21 to 25. We did 4 this year because we didn't want COVID to be the base year. That picture looks very similar to last year. This is the 1-year change. So this is 2024 to 2025, where we grew in the county and where we declined. The growth areas are pretty familiar to all of us. We're still seeing growth. The densities are less since it's a 1-year change. We're seeing that in Grayson. We're seeing it in Mill Creek, parts of Tequila, parts of Mountain View, parts of Seconder. And then we're seeing blue declines in similar areas. It's just at higher concentrations. So we're seeing a situation where that net outmigration or growth is still offsetting decline or outmigration, but barely. As part of our forecasting methodology, of course, we track all development within the county. Gwinnett County Public Schools works very closely with Gwinnett County Planning and Development, as well as municipal planning departments. We're trying to track every development that may impact enrollment. As projects are rezoned, we're tracking that. That becomes a data point in our forecasting methodology. Here we're looking at a density of total units within our database, about 350 active, planned, or proposed developments, about 39,000 units. These are the developments we expect will impact our enrollment next year. So these are things that are impacting it now, will impact us up through August, and probably, no, not probably, will impact us as the school year 26-27 continues, school year continues. These are the densities of the units. We always have to remember, just because a unit's building, it's not the same number of students generated per unit. That's highly dependent on where that unit's built, what type of unit it is, and at what grade level. So here we just show an example of Central Gwinnett, what we call student yields. It's the average number of students generated for elementary, middle, and high within the Central Gwinnett cluster based upon those 3 housing types identified. This is a factor that enters into our forecasting methodology. So big picture, where's the forecast headed? We're projecting continued decline in GCPS. We anticipate a decline of almost 700 students for next year. That's represented in the table at the top. You see elementary and high school are declining. Middle school, we anticipate a slight tick up. And then we've represented each cluster here with really 3 data points. There are 2 bars. The first bar is October 25 enrollment. The second bar is forecasted October 26 enrollment. And then the line shows percentage change that's measured on the right axis. We've sorted the clusters from declining to stable to growing, just to put some perspective around it. We have 6 clusters that are forecasted to grow, many that are stable and others that are declining. We'll change topics a little bit into the area of capacity utilization. As the board is aware, we're very focused on improving utilization of existing capacity throughout the district. We're focused on really reducing reliance on trailers. This will be done through 2 things. It's going to be through a combination of redistricting using available capacity as well as the new construction program. Next 4 slides show over and under enrollment at schools based upon projected enrollment and projected capacity utilization. These are by attendance zones. Big picture, green means we have space. The darker the green, the more space. Red means we're overcrowded, projected to be overcrowded. The darker the red, the more overcrowded. White is sort of plus or minus 10% utilization. So you can see in elementary level, we've got concentrated overcrowding in select regions of the county that are very familiar to our board. Parkview, parts of Brookwood, north side of Shiloh. Grayson cluster is overcrowded. Parts of Tequila, Mill Creek, Seconder, parts of Mountain View, parts of Lanier, and parts of Peachtree Ridge. The dots here represent school locations. The yellow dots represent locations of trailers. The bigger the dot, the relative number of trailers on that site. We have a lot of green sit next to red. And if you look at just aggregating over and under enrollment up to the cluster level, and do a adjusted capacity at the cluster level, you can see that many of the clusters move into this plus or minus 10%. So if we're able to sum them all up into a single cluster and adjust boundaries just within cluster, it would help improve our utilization throughout the county. Does not improve Brookwood or Parkview, or Parkview or Grayson. Brookwood's still on the high end of that percentage distribution, but we also see Seconder is in red as well. Middle schools, this again is middle school attendance boundaries. Middle school is our least overcrowded level, so you see lots of green and less red. We also see opportunities of red and green next to one another. Bay Creek is our highest percentage overcrowded middle school, and you see others, Jones, Osborne, North Gwinnett, and the Brookwood cluster of middle schools. Again, where there's green next to red, those are opportunities potentially to adjust boundaries to improve utilization. And then lastly, we've got our high school enrollment or projected capacity utilization. Most of our high schools are sort of living in that plus or minus 10%, and then we have the familiar high schools that are overcrowded. Grayson, Brookwood, Parkview, and Grayson is overcrowded and rapidly growing, so it's in a little different category than the other two. Last topic on that list. Our board has challenged staff to implement a multi-year approach to addressing utilization through a combination of redistricting and building new classrooms. The next three maps are going to illustrate a potential phased approach for redistricting activity. Sharing this information, as the board has highlighted, will provide greater transparency to our public so our public knows where redistricting activity could happen in the future and when it may happen. It's important to note that exact communities impacted and clusters impacted, that is generally determined by analysis that happens in the summer before the fall redistricting would begin. So that information becomes more refined as we approach those redistrictings. We want to use the best data available as we're making these decisions. That first phase of the next level of redistricting are the highlighted blue clusters here. Why that area? There are no additions in the current capital plan building in that area, so we're essentially utilizing existing capacity to try to address overcrowding issues in that part of the county. Again, not every cluster and every community will be impacted, but this is a general area we'll be focused in. The following year, it is the gray area represented here on the map. We have some of the additions and modifications within this part of the county in the current capital plan illustrated here as well. As much as we can't open all additions in the same year, but as much as we can time those to open during redistricting activity, we minimize the total movement of neighborhoods. So that's always an advantage. This is the same area we recently focused on, and many of the issues that were brought up in our community will be able to be more fully addressed with this scope. And then lastly, the area in green here also represents or illustrates potential or the future additions planned in Capital Plan 31. This would be the last phase. This could happen in fall of 28 or 29 for the subsequent year. The idea, again, is a line opening of additions with potential redistricting to minimize movement. Last slide before I hand the presentation over to our Chief Financial Officer. Next steps related to this work, specific redistricting plans are being developed this summer for potential redistricting this fall that would take effect the following year. Staff are reviewing our redistricting processes. We watched and learned this process that we have today. We want to build upon community engagement opportunities. We're looking at other districts. We're also looking at current technology, how to improve that. Staff will make needed changes to our procedure to help align those. And then long-range student forecasts are being analyzed right now to ensure we're timing construction best as possible within the next capital program. That information will be presented in April. And with that, I'm going to turn our presentation over to our CFO.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Thank you, Mr. Burke. Good evening, Board Chair Dr. Therese, board members, Dr. Taylor. The proposal for the budget reflects a strong collaboration, analysis, and alignment with our strategic priorities. As Georgia's largest and most diverse school system, serving more than 178,000 students, our budget directly shapes student learning, staff support, community trust, and long-term sustainability. I'll provide an overview of the key drivers, the proposed investments, and the revenue outlook, and what we would want to consider recommendations for this budget. Okay. Just a minute. Okay. Before reviewing revenues and expenditures, it's important to highlight the foundation of this budget. Our focus on our 4 implementation areas: literacy and academic excellence, each and every student's success, college and career readiness, and safe and welcoming schools. This year, we're ensuring that we are aligning all of our priority investments that were captured in this year's analysis to ensure that we are aligning them to our strategic priorities within our focus implementation area, as well as our strategic plan, as well as the board's core beliefs and commitments. As we think about our budget development, it's good to focus on our adopted budget. And for the FY2027 development process, it really spans almost a year. We began in October with the public budget survey and the fall student count for state funding. In December, we completed the mid-year salary and position amendment that refines the building baseline of the costs for the new budget. Program managers received their base budgets in January and submitted improvement requests, which were reviewed and evaluated through February. Senior leadership then prioritized major investments and finalized the superintendent's recommended budget by mid-March. Tonight's work session is really a key milestone. This is our first open public work session with the board and the public, and an opportunity to get input in what has been proposed and consider or make considerations for anything that might need to be modified and proposed in the April tentative budget work session. Followed by that, though, most important would be opportunities for public hearings, which occur on May 14th and May 28th, leading to tentative adoption of the budget and the millage rate. And so we did, as we said, we would cover the budget stakeholder survey. And that survey really played a major role in shaping this recommendation, our budget. Our annual budget survey completed by more than 12,000 participants this year. This is an increase from last year, and still every year we're hoping to improve the process. We're really hoping to get up to 20,000, 30,000 number participation. And so next year we're going to make, I think, some concerted efforts to improve the process. Nevertheless, it included parents, students, staff, community members, and really did provide invaluable insight on things and needs across the district. Staff compensation emerged as the top priority, and followed by safety and security, and then innovative programs for students. As we note as well, the board survey summary results are also posted to the district's website now. So our community can now look at the summary results as well as the summary results by cluster. So that's also on the district's website. This is a reminder also of the continuous input feedback that we've built or rolled out this year that allows our community members to also continuously provide us input on the budget through the entire budget process. And this is rolling, so this will be going all year round. And we're hoping that because it is anonymous, because it is translatable in 180 languages, that we'll really get some good insights throughout this process with this tool. So we'll be sharing that information once it's collected as well. And so when we look now at our budget goals and our priorities, it's really important to take a deep dive into what has really shaped the budget this year and the principles that were really, I think, guarded in terms of making sure that we balance fiscal responsibility and stick to the commitment to our students and staff well-being. And of course, they also reflected what our stakeholders told us this year in terms of our feedback. But I'm going to walk us through a couple of the known, or at least the key principles that emerged. In efficiency, we were maximizing every available dollar to directly address student and staff needs. And that meant collecting resources based on evidence and impact, avoiding duplication, and ensuring that funds reach the classroom. We conducted a thorough review of unfilled, and if you remember, we implemented a hiring delay freeze during the fiscal year. So of course, we still had some remaining positions, so district staff, and of course, this is only central office. Any reductions or efficiencies or implications regarding budget would only impact central office, no school impact or no school support impact. And so central office positions were also eliminated, and then of course savings through this process were given back to be able to be redirected to more high priority, high impact areas that support schools and students in learning. The budget strategy really invests in programs and practices really that were really research-based and proven to be high student achievement in innovations, especially around literacy and early learning and college and career readiness. And these areas were where targeted investments, we believe, could produce long-term gains for students. With compensation, obviously, competitive pay is essential. We want to be able to attract and retain high-quality educators and support staff in every, or at least in the very competitive labor market. And of course, compensations in FY27, the budget reflects not only internal considerations, but of course the market data and the internal analysis that we've done, the studies that we've done. And then finally, transparency. We want to continue to be open, clear about our sustainable financial planning. Throughout this process, the assumptions, the revenue sources, the expenditure priorities, these have all been communicated openly and to the public, and transparency really does build the trust with our community once we are keeping them informed. Together with these principles for FY27, the budget is and will be not only fiscally sound, but also strategically aligned to our mission, our vision, and of course, supporting every student. This slide is a very high-level overview of the total all-funds budget for FY27. The recommended total budget is $3.5 billion, which represents about a 0.14% decrease from the FY26 amended budget. And before actually discussing the individual funds, it's important to really note that the FY26 budget, as noted in the third column, this adjustment or updated amended budget is really for adjustments regarding state and federal grant, as well as capital projects, carryover funds, and costs associated with state health as of December 31st. So those one-time adjustments increased the FY26 budget baseline used for FY27. Now looking at the fund levels, general fund, so we're going to look at our, really what we call our operating funds, our fund group. General fund is our day-to-day operating fund, increased about 1.14% or $32.4 million. This increase is almost entirely driven by state-mandated employee changes, such as the changes to the state health benefit cost. It increased again. TRS is also, the rate has gone up as well. And then again, we're thankful for our $2,000 governor's supplement, salary supplements. So these are costs that must be absorbed in the FY27 budget. In our special revenue fund, this decreased by 0.46, reflecting adjustments in federal grants such as Title I, IDE, special ed. These changes align with budget federal allocations. Enterprise fund and internal service fund, these also, enterprise fund increased by 3.909%, which is really driven entirely by operating costs, increased operating costs in our school nutrition program. And in our internal service fund decreased about 1.88, showing more of our stabilization in terms of our programs around workers' comp claims and risk management and print services. Our capital projects, we see a significant decrease of about 20.7 compared to 26, and this was really due to fewer major construction. If you remember, we built out our Mary K. Murphy Middle School in FY26, so that would be considered major construction in comparison to FY27. No major construction, we're not going to be building a school. Debt service increased by 7.3%, tied to our principal and interest obligation. And this really, of course, reflects our continuing responsibility to meet long-term debt commitments. So when taking these changes together, the total budget of 4.9, or net reduction of 4.9 million, or 0.14 across all funds, while this is modest, it really does deflect, or at least reflect, the winding down of the one-time costs and capital grants based or balanced with the increases of the operational management costs. Overall, the budget remains stable, strategically aligned, and focused on meeting student achievement while building fiscal responsibility. This slide really illustrates how the total budgeted revenue is supported and really highlights the ongoing imbalance between local and state funding, balancing what we're getting from the state QBE grants versus what we are collecting on our local revenues from taxes, et cetera. Looking at the revenue breakdown at the top slide, it is really about 48% budgeted revenue comes from local sources, so again, primarily property and sales tax. 45% from state funding, which is quality basic education and other grants, and then, of course, the remaining from our federal and other revenues. While this really looks balanced at a high level, the chart on the right makes clear that state revenues really do not fully cover the required services. In several key areas, for instance, there were services like operational that really is the state only provides a partial support for leaving the district to make up that difference. And so local revenue was covered, say 100% for classified. As you know, the state only covers the cost of our certified staff, so the district has to bear the cost for all classified staff healthcare costs. Local dollars also, about 90% is what we have to cover for the teacher sick and personal leave, 87% of our pre-K costs, 77% of our pupil transportation, 62% for school safety, and 44% for special education. The pie chart on the left shows the overall revenue mix, but the horizontal bar chart on the right tells the real story. GCPS must use a significant portion of local tax revenue to fill gaps in areas that the state either does not fund or partially runs. And so this presents a structural imbalance, and it's not new, but it continues to grow each year, especially in areas like health insurance, special education, for instance, transportation, and safety. And so to maintain high-quality services for students, the district must likely continually backfill these gaps through other sources, meaning our local funding. So understanding this dynamic is really important as we review the investments and sustainability across the district in essential services in our plans for the future. This slide provides a summary of the FY27 general fund budget, which is approximately $2.8 billion. It represents an estimated increase, as we mentioned in the previous slide, of $32 million, or about 1% compared to, so it's just about 1% increase compared to that of FY26. The key point, though, is that the general fund, the increases really and truly are coming from mandated costs. The new initiatives, if we were to just exclude what was the state-mandated costs and only look at the local costs, the initiatives, because we did a lot of reallocation, we would have been significantly under budget, as shown here. This is what it is now. And of course, it is without this one on the right. The one on the right, we show the general fund without the mandates, removing approximately 75 million of those mandated costs that I mentioned. And in this, it would be about 2%. And then, of course, in the state required increases. When mandates removed, the FY27 expenditures are actually lower by 40 million, or just about 1.5% compared to the prior. This bar chart at the bottom really illustrates, for instance, the gray bar is the FY26 amount. But then if you look at the blue bar, which shows the increase in the budget with the mandates, in the green, it's significantly much higher versus the blue bar, which is it without the mandates and just the budget with the initiatives that we propose. So significantly even under FY26's budget. This slide really highlights, I think, the financial pressures facing the district, the steady substantial growth in state mandated costs. These increases really are outside of the district's control, as you know, but they directly affect our operational budget and long-term planning, because they are required. Over the last 6 years, from 2022 to 2027, GCPS absorbed more than a $400 million cost in terms of mandated health costs. When averaged over that period, the annual increase is about $66.7 million per year. These mandates include higher employer contributions for state health and, of course, the teacher retirement system rates, as well as other legislative requirements. The blue bars on the right show the historical increases for each of the past 6 years, and as you can see, some years we spiked dramatically, for instance, particularly 2024, 2025, while others are more moderate. This level of volatility makes it challenging, really, to project our long-term financial outlook with precision, as you know, which is why we have to do multi-level forecasting. And for instance, on scenario A, this is on the right, the green line, this assumes that costs continue to rise at the same pace as they have historically. So that's why you see that model with the line growing from 86.5 million in 2028 to more than 132 million by 2033, 2033. And so this is a significant increase if you were to just look at how it has been pacing and continuously use that model, whereas in scenario B, the average, the 6-year average, here we assume costs, and this is the black line, here we assume costs increase at roughly over a 6-year average, about 66.7 million annually, and this produces a very moderate but substantial projection of growth increases. And then in C, which is the last 3-year average, the orange line, when we look at the most recent 3 years, the mandated increases were exceptionally high, and the average jumps to about 82.4 million per year, which reflects a higher inflation and economic volatility across our state benefit program. Together, these scenarios really illustrate a financial challenge ahead. Regardless of which model we use, we're paying more. We're projected to pay more, it's going to continue to rise, and I think over time we'll still have to bear a larger burden of general fund towards benefit costs unless something drastically changes. And this, of course, reinforces our long-term range planning as we look for more efficiencies, and we're careful to monitor state policies, and of course use our legislative power as much as we possibly can, to really ensure that we have our district's best interests at heart in terms of sustaining funding long term. now we're going to look at the allocation of the budget, the general fund budget again, 2.8 billion. But this slide really and truly is an overview of how it's allocated across major functional areas, and understanding how the dollars flow across the organization is essential in evaluating how the budget supports the core mission of of the district, teaching and learning. And so first and foremost, salaries and benefits account for approximately 91% of the general fund expenditures. This, of course, underscores our commitment to investing directly in the people who serve students every day. And that is our teachers, our paras, our bus drivers, our nutrition workers, custodians, support staff. GCPS is fundamentally a people-driven organization, and of course this is really demonstrated very clearly here. Looking at an instructional side, 82.3% of the general fund supports instructional services. This is, of course, including our classroom teachers, our instructional materials, special education, early learning, support programs. And of course, the large blue section of the pie chart on the right illustrates the centrality of instruction in our spending plan. Maintenance and operations, 6.6%, pupil transportation, 6%, central services, 3.3%, and then general administration at 1.8%, which of course is a very low percentage. Then on the right side, you can see there are other data points that are important. Our per pupil expenditures for the projected FY27 proposed budget is $16,156. I think it was $1,580 from FY26 currently. 90% of the budget is school-based, meaning the vast majority of the pie chart shows it is going towards classroom students, and then students and school operations. Only 10% of the budget is central office. And finally, GCPS does support approximately 14,000 plus teachers. Altogether, this distribution of the budget is really focused and I think aligned to student learning. It shows the resources are not only sufficient in scale, but strategically aligned to other functions that are most and directly impact students, and that's through teaching and learning. So how do we compare to other districts? And this slide provides a comparison of GCPS to the other Metro Atlanta districts for using the state reported FY25 data on pupil and expenditure information. And then starting with the far left, you can see, for instance, the FTE count reported for the 2025 QB allotments, so the student FTE. Gwinnett is, of course, the largest, serving 192,811 students at that time, more than double several of the other school districts. And of course, the scale is important because it shows the operational efficiencies that are reflected in our spending patterns. Looking at the instructional expenditures column, GCPS directs about $1.8 billion toward instruction, representing the highest percent compared to other districts. Examining the per FTE expenditures, Gwinnett continues to maintain a low per student cost comparable to the other metro districts across key service areas. For example, in the per FTE instructional spending of $9,367 is well below APS's and several other peers. If we move across to the table to pupil services, staff services, and support services, we see similar patterns. Gwinnett's per pupil cost in these areas remains significantly lower than other metro averages, and reflecting our ability to achieve some efficiencies, of course with the advantage of scale, and still providing comprehensive services to students. Gwinnett maintains the lowest cost per student in several key areas. The district's scale provides meaningful efficiency, allowing us to maximize our classroom investments. Other districts substantially have more per pupil on central office or other services, and GCPS prioritizes putting resources closest to students. And of course, we are serving the most diverse population with varied levels of need. Our investments in our pupil services remain targeted, efficient, and aligned to student outcomes. So overall, the comparison really reinforces how GCPS continues to be high-value, high-impact district, while striving to maintain fiscal responsibility and spending patterns that really do favor and align to instruction. This is a continuation of that comparison, and overall, I won't go through each one in the interest of time and trying to get through more of the other slides, but generally we're saying that our maintenance and operation per spending is the lowest in the entire cohort group, and it does again really reflect a significant area of efficiencies for the district. And so how do we actually look in terms of when we're funding the distribution of state revenue in our operating budget? And so this pie chart is just really a quick overview of the $2.8 billion in revenue and the distribution of state and local funding and grants, as well as the other sources, of the small sources. So state funds account for the largest share, representing about 54.7%. Local taxes about 41.83%, and then the remaining comes from the other sources, very small, 0.3 from federal funds, and then general operations. GCPS, of course, must monitor the state legislative sessions to ensure that some of the discussions that are taking place may not have immediate or long-term impacts to any of our local revenue. On the local side, we're looking at about a 1.7% property tax digest growth at this time. Of course, this is still tied to the Gwinnett economic development, and it does not currently require a millage rate increase. This is, of course, the slide that really shows the record of the GCPS approach to managing the millage rate, where we've steadily looked at lowering or reducing the property taxes, shown, as you can see again, in the years 2019, 2020, 2022, 2023, 25, and then in 26, we reduced about 1.7 mils across those fiscal years. And of course, this helped to offset some of the rising assessments for homeowners. For the FY27 projection, the digest growth of 1.7% is expected at this point in time to generate sufficient local revenue for the proposed budget. So we're not proposing a millage rate increase. And then, of course, the chart on the right, we explain to our taxpayers that, of course, a stable millage rate demonstrates our commitment to limiting that impact on property taxes again. And so we're going to move right into our investments for fiscal year 2027, again, aligning to stakeholder survey input, as well as prioritizing for alignment to the needs of our strategic priorities and our board core reliefs. Compensation, we mentioned, was our top ranked priority in our community surveys. And in compensation, we're proposing a salary step increase for all eligible employees, a $1,000 increase for eligible employees on the teacher salary scale, a 2% cost of living increase for those not on the teacher salary scale, a one-time retention supplement of $2,000 for eligible employees subject to state appropriation, which we knew is coming, increased compensation for assistant principals. This was through recommendations both in our XFATs as well as in our salary study to have this analysis done. The increases for paraprofessionals, bus drivers, monitors, substitute teachers, as well as were included in the recommendations from the salary study based on market. Oh, sorry. Okay, here we go. And so the next is the literacy and academic excellence, expanded K-1 summer literacy camps at multiple promise schools, additional student to teacher racial relief positions, middle school investments in intensive reading programs for identified students, high school intensive reading courses, and then early expansion of early literacy supports aligned to the district's data and instructional goals. These investments really reinforce our priority for early literacy foundations and providing interventions, supports for all grades. Under each and every student, investment in extending the full-day program for high-need areas, increasing the number of multilingual instructional specialists, expanding inclusive practices, and employing a pilot model, and then adding advanced math and ELA support for 9th and 10th grade aligned to district's academic recovery and readiness. These help ensure that every student has access to staffing, supports, and instructional pathways they need to succeed. Under college and career, to strengthen post-secondary readiness, elementary investments in STEM and robotic pathways, middle school administration of PSATs for 8th and 9th at no cost to families, high school PSATs and SATs offered at no cost to 11th grade students. These expand rigorous programming and remove financial barriers that often limit our students' participation. Safe and welcoming schools. Finally, of course, safety remains a major priority for us in the district and in this budget. Continued implementation of the elementary weapons detection pilots, additional school resource officers, including officers assigned to middle and high schools, additional school social workers to address mental health and crisis intervention needs, and then a new learning, professional learning system for school safety, and finally, the facility improvement, such as the HVAC, roofing, carpet replacements, and more. And then these, of course, reinforce the commitment of ensuring every school is safe and has a supportive learning environment. All of our investments that have been mentioned were detailed, of course, in our strategic priorities, alignment of investments and initiatives document that we normally put also and share on the district's website. This year, it includes now core beliefs as well as ROIs. So as we're looking at what will be included, we also have to make sure that it is including the alignments to our strategic plan, our blueprint for the future, as well as the board's core beliefs. And so this really and truly is going to be something that we hope will be of value to our community members as well. And now, when we talked about the work that we did with our divisions to help with the reduction in the budget, so we're looking for efficiencies. What we did and what we conducted was a really thorough review of central office operations, and we're able to generate about $18.4 million in savings by this effort. First, consolidating administrative services produced about $7.5 million in reductions, including nearly 70 long-term vacant positions. And then second, divisions identified about $10.9 million in non-personnel operations. This, of course, really does reflect the discipline, and we're trying to do more with less while protecting school services and advancing the strategic priorities. This slide breaks down how the central office reductions were captured by division. As you can see, it's organized by division. Human resources reflects the largest reduction of over $4.4 million, combining both salaries and non-personnel adjustments. So about 5.49 positions. Teaching and learning follows about $3.45 million in reductions, including about 11 staff, 11.5 FTE. Facilities and operations, about $3.909 million, primarily from non-personnel efficiencies, along with about 34 FTE from previous vacancies that were held. School improvement and operations, about 2.7 or 2.8 million combined in staffing and operational reductions, including about almost 5, so 4.99 FTE. Other divisions that contributed were strategic, so SPA, strategic performance and accountability, 1.9 million, technology and innovation, 1.54 million, and with 11 FTE, business and finance, 1 million. We can't afford to give up any FTE. And the superintendent's office with an additional 3 FTE. This slide highlights how GCPS manages financial risk with everything that we've talked about and what we've spoke of in the past. We really have to think about long-term sustainability in everything that we do, and so strong financial management is required. To be able to balance the budget every year, it requires building resilience, just around planning for being able to withstand any kind of unexpected fiscal pressures, whether it's state funding changes, enrollment shifts, or any broad economic volatility. We have to be able to be prepared. And so on the left, you'll see the reserve contingency framework. As you know, the district maintains a rainy day fund at or above the board established minimum, which is currently 10%. I know that we are proposing a policy that would raise this to 12%, but at this point it's 10. So this is really primarily to cushion us in the event of any mid-year shortfall or unanticipated revenue that could happen. But also it allows you to take the impact of maybe sort of inflationary shocks per se, especially in some of your high volatility areas like your health benefit program, your special education costs, and every new technology that's going to come out and how we're going to be impacted. There's no way to really gauge for those types of things, but there's sure to be studies out there soon. But again, these volatile areas are what we have to plan for as well, as to be able to avoid any one-time dependency on any type of, debt, as much as possible. Then on the right, as we look at the future considerations, we really need to continue to monitor state legislations. As you know, they can affect funding, so QB funding, what are they doing around the employee benefits? Are they going to suddenly decide that they will reestablish picking up certified classified costs as well? Enrollment trends, what our long-term debt and capital would look like through SPLOST. And so these are some of the things that we would have to consider and plan for that in terms of the necessary reserves as time goes by. We do know legislation is being proposed to increase the current state statute around fund balance reserves not exceeding 15%. That is proposed to be increasing to 25%. Not that that affects us or impacts us now, as we are a Swiss waiver district. This is a reminder of the budget timeline and what's next, and just some of the key things that we need to be prepared for and what they represent. And of course, as you know, April 16th, the board will hold its second work session. So this is where we will consider the tentative adoption of the budget. Any revisions between now and then, we would want to have them incorporated in the tentative budget adoption. Of course, information will be published as there's more that needs to be shared. And then, of course, we will gear up for the May 14th public hearing, and then again on May 28th for another public hearing, followed by final adoption of the budget and the tentative millage rate. These work sessions, of course, are open to the public, and all of the information, the resources will be on our district's website. This concludes, I think, fundamentally most of the areas or categories we covered, and so I would conclude my presentation now, and Dr. Taylor, turn it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Burke and Ms. Millard, for your presentation. For the next part of the agenda, I'd like to open up the floor for our board to members to make comments and ask any questions regarding the information presented. Board members?
So 2020. Okay. How much time do we have?
We have a short executive session agenda, so 20 minutes or so.
20 minutes total.
Yeah.
Okay.
25, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. About 5 minutes per person. Okay, so I got about 5 minutes. So I have a few questions for Chief Millard. Thank you so much for this presentation. I also have one question for Mr. Burke. Chief Millard, when we look at, I'm going to start on slide 37, when you broke down the compensation and what employees can anticipate. So can you clarify whether employees will receive a retention bonus, salary increase, or both?
All eligible employees would receive a 2% COLA,
Cost of living?
cost of living, for everyone who's not on the teacher's salary scale, and everyone who's on the teacher's salary scale would receive a $1,000 increase. They also both receive a step increase, which is, again, for all eligible employees, and then a $2,000 increase for those who've been identified. Keep in mind, this is FY27's budget. I guess we'll talk about FY26 soon, but if there's a plan to expand that to all employees, then that could be an additional cost as well.
Thank you. And you mentioned a $2,000 in addition. Is that separate from, or does that include the governor's increase?
That is the governor's increase.
And when will
It's a supplement.
it's a supplement? And when will staff see that reflected on their compensation?
If you're speaking about FY26, the amended FY26, I'd like to give Dr. Taylor, or if you'd like me to say it, well, we are planning to request the board's approval to approve expanding that supplement to all district employees, and at the same time, the intention is to have the $2,000 payment to all eligible employees paid out by April, so the April paycheck. That's the plan I think Dr. Taylor is going to be proposing this evening.
Okay, thank you, Chief Millard. And there was a common theme around doing more with less. You mentioned on slide 32 and 33 that Gwinnett County Public Schools maintains a relatively low per pupil cost. Does this correlate to staff compensation? And I ask this because I didn't see in the presentation how our compensation for our employees correlate with metro districts, but I did see how we correlate how much we spend per pupil.
Mm-hmm. This is not it's not a direct correlation, but it could be an indirect correlation, certainly, because if we are being more efficient with our maintenance and operation and those types of costs, and we have more that's available for instruction, which we evidently do, then obviously we're able to provide for compensation increases that help us gain that traction. The other thing, too, is we do have, for instance, the FY26 current with and without our GRS benefits. What the rates and how we compare look like. I think that could probably be something in the interest of time that we give to the board, but certainly we tend to fall between the third and fourth within the metro comparison. And with, of course, these additional increases, it would probably bump us up to more like second and third, but we're certainly not first.
Okay, thank you, Chief Millard. I would look forward to receiving that data. Also, was happy to see that literacy academics was a part of our priorities from a budget standpoint. Look forward to an update on that success. And then for the sake of time, my next question is for Mr. Burke. I am going to be referencing primarily slide 13, 12 and 13 on the issue of redistricting. And on the map, Grayson is overcrowded at all grade bands, elementary, middle, and high school, and that growth is projected to increase even more in 2027. Could you provide an update on communication plan, outreach with the community? I know that this was referenced in the presentation, but it also came up in previous, over the past couple of months, around the communication plan and what that will look like, and whether the district has a plan to ensure that this redistricting process is happening more with the community instead of to the community.
Yes, thank you for that question, Ms. Stone. Yes, it's our intention to put this information out in the public domain through our website and communicate this information as it's made available. Tonight was, of course, the first step in that process by sharing the information with the board. We've already shared the information with our principals during level meetings at LD1 this past month. So we're beginning that process of communicating. It'll be a continual thing. Every year we'll be updating information and providing new information to the public about our process or our schedule.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bird. My last question, referencing slide 18, with the new possible additions opening in fall of 2027. With the communication plan, will the new additions also be a part of that communication plan?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Stone, for that question. To clarify, these would be additions that would open at the earliest in fall of '28, based upon when we start this work and the new capital plan and when it could be feasible. And that too would be part of that communications plan. We'll share more of that information next month during the capital budget or the capital plan update in April.
Mr. Burke, while you're there.
Yes.
Just to make sure I'm understanding, slide 17, the blue, affects mostly District 2, District 3. No building updates in those areas. So that's the first one. Obviously, if we have to build, we need some time. So we're going to address the issues there from a redistricting perspective, primarily within cluster, correct?
That's correct. A lot of and you saw it in the previous slides where we have opportunities to correct balances between over and under enrolled, and many opportunities exist within existing cluster boundaries.
Okay. And did we have it, and we're talking summer, I mean, obviously it's something we learned from our opportunity last fall with Grayson. How soon do we start rolling out what some of these tentative plans are going to look like?
We'll get through the approval process. One of our thoughts in the community engagement, enhancing the community engagement, is to bring options to the community, not just one option to the community. So that conversation would start in sort of late September, early October is what we would anticipate.
Okay, so we start the conversation in the fall for the following fall redistricting. Okay.
Yes, sir. Our goal is to get information, gather community input prior to that November forum with our board, that first November forum with our board.
Okay, great. Thank you. Ms. Millard, I usually pretty good with numbers. I'm just wondering, you don't have to do it tonight, obviously, but slides 32 and 33 on our comparison with the other metro districts, maybe I just need a personal tutorial at some point in time, but I'm thinking that it needs to be reworked a little bit so it's a little more understandable as to what you're trying to communicate there. Because again, I'm usually pretty good with numbers, and I was having a hard time trying to figure out
Okay. Thank you for
what that was doing. So, and again, maybe we can take it offline. But that was, but I do appreciate, and I don't have a lot to belabor, I do appreciate the work to minimize the growth outside of the state mandates. And I think you do bring up and illustrate a great point that the state makes a lot of decisions that impact us. And they may or may not provide the funding to go along with those decisions that they make. So ongoing conversation with them around that, but I appreciate the work that you all have done to try to keep us in a reasonable growth perspective, especially given the tax digest and the minimal growth there. I think in some areas of the county we may actually see a decline in revenue based upon some of the values, the real estate values that I'm seeing. So I do appreciate the conservative approach to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knudsen.
Yeah, thank you both for this very detailed presentation. And I'm not going to labor too much, obviously, in the interest of time, but I really was intrigued by slides 30 and 31. I think this was your assessment of the state required mandates versus non-state required mandates as they affect the SHBP and the TRS. And I guess they really put pressure on us to increase the funding into these. And is there a percent that we have to target every year? I guess, can you put a little more clarity as to why the increase and how much specifically it is? And I mean, I saw it on the, you talked a little bit about it. Is there a target that they give us?
They don't target, but we have steadily been at least planning for about 40 to 60 million.
Wow.
Has been
Okay.
our range.
Okay. Yeah, that's something else. And I do like the visuals on this because it helps the public see that. Because my first thought was when you, in the previous slides, when we're talking about student numbers decreasing and our general fund increasing, everyone's, of course me included, going, why are we spending more money when our students' population is going down? You laid it out very nicely, and I think that's important for not only me to see your explanation, but everyone else that's going to put eyes on this budget and this explanation as well. So that was very well done. I appreciate that. I was also very happy to see the work that you all did here at the district office under the efficiency and reduction strategies of $18.4 million in savings. And when you said, you used the terminology, I'll have to go back to the slide, I'm sorry. Office positions reduced 69.98. So that's reduced, is that just normal retirement, attrition? I'm assuming that's what that means?
No,
No.
it meant, remember, we had implemented the hiring delay freeze, and so we sort of had a number of unfilled vacancies. And so districts were able to really assess whether or not, one, how long have these positions been vacant? If it's 3 years, do you actually, how you're running, you're being efficient, maybe you need to rethink this. And so a lot of study around what was proposed, what was important to be able to keep and what was important to be, well, doesn't seem to have any return on investment. So giving up those positions resulted in that $6.9 million.
Good.
Yep.
Almost pulled the positions off the job board,
Yep.
basically.
Yep.
And then last question for me, and I just lost my page. I apologize. I know it's in your budget section. It was, you were talking about the central office. Here it is, page 31, or sorry, yeah, slide 31. Business support and general administration represents 1.8% of the budget. And then on the second half, you talked about central office, 10%. Is there any correlation to those two numbers?
No,
No.
it's the difference between school-based and central office.
School-based and
Yep,
central office, business support and general
what we're
administration.
saying,
Okay.
what we're
okay.
saying is that of this, 90% is school-based positions and support versus the 10% is really central office, not school-based related at all.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Burke, Chief Millar, thank you so much for the presentation. So much that I could elevate in terms of appreciation with how the information was presented today. I especially like the alignment to budget initiatives and strategic priorities. I saw that was available online for public access. I love that the ROI metric is included. It really shows a lot of thoughtfulness behind what was presented and what the district is looking to do in terms of the budget. So thank you for all of the work put into what you've shared with us today. I I noted that we are increasing compensation for assistant principals to be more on par, I think, with some of the surrounding pay that we see with other districts. We've also increased compensation for paraprofessionals, bus drivers, managers, monitors, as well as the substitute teacher incentive structure. So that is clearly in response to the survey. Our community wants us to invest in
Yes.
retention and recruitment and taking care of our staff. So that is certainly to be expected and appreciated. One thing I wanted to hear more around is our special education staff. I know that in the HR reports we receive month to month, it appears that special ed vacancies are frequent. And I don't see any particular compensation aligned to that. Can you provide any feedback around, are we feeling that compensation is not needed to address those vacancies? Are the number of vacancies we see around special ed positions, is that typical compared to other areas? Just any insight you can provide there would be helpful.
Well, I can certainly say that it is typical, but I would want to allow Chief Harden, since I know Chief Harden is eager to come to the podium and address this, because she knows that I will just not do it justice. Oh. But no, to answer your question, Dr. Simmons, yes, this is certainly consistent with other
While
districts.
she's coming up, because I know I only have 5 minutes, if one of you can speak to the bus tracking system, I'm excited to hear that there will be investment there. I know that as recent as this winter, we as a board received email communication from parents around students waiting out in the cold, having no expectation of when the bus would arrive. So are we certainly going to see investment? Will this tracking system be put in place for the start of the school year, or when can we expect it?
Thank you for the question, Dr. Simmons. It's not going to be available at the beginning of the school year because the summer's going to be required to install the technology on all the buses. And then we've got to test the technology with our drivers to make sure the timekeeping is working and the login is working. As I may have mentioned to the board through other communications, this is a pretty complicated project and it's a big jump for us. It's that linking the bus driver to the route to the bus, which is the key. We've got to make sure that's correct before we roll it out, or we're going to have a lot of false information out there in the public. We'll have more information once we fully procure the solution, so stay tuned as soon as we get that on board. We're doing proof of concepts right now, though, so please know we're working on it.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the question, Dr. Simmons. Certainly, we did have some recommendations for doing something around differentiation for special education teachers. Just in the prioritization of all of the initiatives that we've carried forward, we just landed on a decision that that's something we need to continue to look at. Certainly, our recruitment efforts are improving around hiring special education teachers. Our retention is improving. And so really just stepping back and taking a look at totality, how are all of the efforts playing into staffing as a whole.
So can you speak to whether or not the vacancies we see around special ed are on par with what you're seeing in other metro area districts, or is it that how we're compensating our staff is lending toward maybe more vacancies than we see in other districts?
No, I think this is a industry-wide concern. It's not specific to Gwinnett nor the Metro Atlanta area. We're on par with our peers here in the Metro Atlanta area and nationwide.
Thank you for confirming that for me.
Sure.
If we could, on slide 31, there is a data point that supports that we spend 90% of our budget on schools and 10% goes to the district. How does that compare to other large high-performing districts. Have you done a comparison? How do we line up there?
I'm sorry, I've not seen it on mine. Slide 31.
31. That's 33. Page 31.
It's looking. It's
Do
not-
you see the page numbers?
Yeah, it's not moving though.
Okay. Well, you had a slide that just noted that we spend 90% of our budget on schools, 10% on district. How does that compare to other large, high-performing school districts? Was there an analysis done?
Well, I think in terms of the comparison, for the instructional side alone, we obviously spend more on our instructional side, which is more or less most of your general fund operating budget. So I didn't do the analysis specifically on that, no, but I would imagine that 90% would be still higher than what you'd see probably in other districts.
So I just want to make sure I'm clear around the comparison as we think about other high-performing school systems. Do they spend about 90% at the school level and 10% at the district? Is that something you've looked into, high-performing school districts?
Usually, with a lot of the higher performing, not comparable in size though, you'd find a lot of higher performing districts that are much smaller, which obviously they don't have the economies of scale, so they're probably their expenditure costs, so their per pupil would be much higher. And I would imagine that the percentage between school and central office could be a little skewed because of their size alone. So I'd have to really break it out by more what's comparable to our district. And so we know the typical school districts, whether we'd probably have to do the comparison based upon that. I would say it would be more fair in terms of the scale and size of the district. So we can do that for you.
I appreciate it. I know we've been discussing the implementation of an equity audit of sorts, which I think will shed more light as well, but something of interest. And then as we think about the investment in the evolved weapons detectors, I know it's been a discussion amongst our legislators around possibly mandating detection devices in elementary school. We've implemented them in middle and high. I see that we're proposing to pilot them in elementary school and select elementary schools. I just want to get clarity around, is this being funded, is this being funded through our general fund? Is this being funded through a grant of sorts? And to layer on, if there is legislation passed that makes it a mandate, and it's funded by the state, I'm assuming, did we pay out of general fund, or was that a grant that we used to pay for middle and high school? Can you speak to that?
Currently, it's the capital projects fund. So we're paying for the equipment, so the board items that you just approved, that's funded out of, primarily for the equipment, out of the capital projects fund. So East Blast funds, that's going to continue to
So in the
maintain
event that our legislators decide to fund detection systems,
we would just
will we receive any type of reimbursement? What does that look like for us? Because we've invested a lot of money in something that could possibly be funded by the state later.
It would be great if they say we would go back or be retroactive to 2023. But it all depends on how it's proposed. If they're saying that it's prospectively, then it probably would be you would have to go out and purchase in some upcoming program budget, and then we'll reimburse you. We're not sure yet. But it would be nice if it went retroactively, because districts actually, because of our response, to our own Georgia state, incident, we responded across, I think, every school district in Georgia. So, but again, I shouldn't really be giving my opinion.
I just want to make sure that we are in a place where we are able to really get the most value for our dollars, and I know that we want to be proactive in keeping our students safe, but if there's a way to make sure we're engaging with the state and with our legislators around, making sure our dollars go as far as they can, and there not being this instance of we can't benefit maybe from legislation that's coming. I know there's a lot of ambiguity there, but I trust that the district is having those conversations so that our dollars can really go the distance for us here in Gwinnett. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have to prioritize my questions. I did have a few questions, and I know we have some limited time. First, I want to thank you all for your presentation, and I also want to, if you can pull up slide number 9. I'm kind of going to go as fast as I can here, but in slide number 9, I'm looking at the 2024 to 2025 annual change. In the blue area, we see the decline in the population here for students, and it also looks like it is one of the reasons are due to, I'm seeing general out-migration. Can say directly that I've heard from community members, and I live in the community in South Gwinnett, in this area here highlighted in blue, and I see the shifts in the demographics. I see the shift in the decline in our community members, and much of it is due to ICE activity in our communities. Many of our community members are self-deporting, and we also see the correlation in our data around absenteeism that's related to that as well. So I wanted to highlight that one of the major reasons, in addition to the national decline in enrollment, and we see that in middle school where the population seemed like it was pretty steady for a while, and now with the elementary school students, it's directly related to lower birth rates. I think that trend, when you look further beyond school age, you see the trend happening not just in the U.S., but actually there's this global trend in decline in general around fertilities, people waiting longer and having less children. So I can see that that is not just a national trend, but a global trend around that. I'm just wanted to highlight that part. In slide number 12, we also see, if you can give clarity around Meadow Creek here, does this mean that Meadow Creek has the largest decline? I just want to clarify that, because I'm also seeing on slide number 12, there's Meadow Creek.
Yeah, thank you,
Can you explain
Dr.
that?
Therese, for your question. It's a lot of data on one chart, and you have to forgive me. We have three
Can you
data points
clarify that?
essentially
Thank you.
going on here. The total enrollment is measured on the left axis. So the reason why Meadow Creek is so large here, it's because it's the largest cluster in terms of total student enrollment. That first bar, again, is current October FTE, and the next bar is projected next year. So you'll see that it declines, so it sits on the decline side of how we've spread our clusters, but that measure of total enrollment is on the left, the percent decline on the right. It's just too much information on one slide. We try to consolidate everything there.
I got it. And this is my point. I wanted to make sure before I made this, is that we see that Meadow Creek has historically been the largest district. We also see it being one of the greatest districts impacted in terms of the decline in enrollment. So I just find that very interesting. I also say that's a direct correlation to ICE activities in our community. And then I see on page 25, I want to highlight the format that you have for people to provide feedback. I also want to say to our community to please continue to go to our website. There is lots of robust information, and certainly please provide feedback regarding our budget. We have 3 hearings, so it's really important for us to engage our community. So then the other point I have is, if we look at page 28, seeing that, I'm trying to go fast. Number 1, health insurance. Number 2 is teacher leave. And number 3, we have pre-K preschool disability. I'd love to learn more about the pre-K preschool disability, in particular related to literacy investments. It didn't seem like that included expansion in pre-K programs. I know that's something that I've been advocating for years, in particular in the promised school areas. Can you just provide some more information around that, please?
I believe Dr. Therese, there is an investment there for expansion of pre-K, and it's going to be in, what's that? Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. And while you all are coming up, I want to just say this is all related to, because then since I see you, this is really related to the budget is a moral document. We visited Marietta School District, Marietta, thank you, Marietta School District, and it was really a profound experience around learning how the budget was prioritized in a way that really centered literacy learning. And so while you're here, if you can just, because of time, if you can also roll in, I had a couple of other questions around reading coaches, reading specialists, and also expansion of pre-K and the after-school literacy investments. So on this document, there's a section here, the second page, the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, it all talks about really investing in literacy. I know this is a lot of information here. If y'all can kind of sum up a bit how we are investing in these things. I love that you have it here, and it literally reads, I can't read it, I need my glasses. But
We'll have Kim start with the pre-K expansion while we pull up the information you have.
Yep, so Dr. Therese, thank you for that question. First want to say that part of the funding gap is preschool disabilities grant. That's our early childhood special education. We spend a lot of local funding to subsidize what's happening in our early childhood special ed classrooms. So that's a lot of that gap in funding. But also we are looking at an expansion of pre-K for next year up to 20 classrooms, and we have applied for state funding through the DECAL Bright from the Start grant, and so that was just submitted this week, and we'll find out by early May if we receive that grant. And so the budgeted amount in the proposed budget is without state grant, and then there's also, I'm assuming, information in the budget that talks about what the grant would cover of that expansion.
So, good evening, Chairperson Dr. Morgan, members of the board. So with the literacy investments that are highlighted in our proposed budget investments for this year, one of the first things that you'll see is a K-1 literacy camp. This is a result of us looking very closely at our data and where we're starting to see that biggest sort of decline start with our students is that transition from kindergarten to first grade. So one of the things that we wanted to pilot, we may have the opportunity for a small pilot this summer, but really have a more robust plan for the summer of 2027 is really to have the opportunity to offer a K-1 camp for identified schools. And you saw the schools that are listed on that investment sheet. We wanted to try to tackle a couple of things with this pilot. We're really looking to pair a novice and veteran teacher together in that summer program so that we can continue to build the capacity of our new teachers to help them feel more comfortable and better equipped to be able to roll out and implement structured literacy at a high level. So that's just a snapshot of that particular piece, and we can provide more information in our board update for you to review before our next conversation. I believe the second piece that you're looking at would be the reduction in class size ratio for the literacy blocks specifically. And we saw an example of what that looked like at the Marietta City School visits, where they had specialized reading specialists who push in during that literacy block and provide They basically take that class size, which their class sizes were a little bit smaller than ours, and those classes are kind of split in half based on what students need. And there's a teacher providing direct literacy instruction for those students, and then there's another teacher providing direct instruction for other students. So we were wanting to pilot that in a couple of our identified schools in this upcoming school year.
Thank you. I do have a couple of questions, but I can't ask them because of time. So, but I do want to just share, thank you so much for the effort around the literacy investments, expansion of pre-K, and all the work that we've been doing in that area. And I also want to encourage in our, we have several presentations coming up, if we can also tie in the legislative impacts that have impacted our budget specifically, I think that would be very helpful for us and for our community to understand the legislative impacts so we can continue to have more advocacy around our community members voting for our legislators to help support the needs of investing in public school education. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there is no further business, I need a motion to adjourn our meeting.
I make a motion to adjourn the budget work session.
Is that a second? All in favor say aye. Oh, is there any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. It's unanimous. Thank you.